We like to give you things on this show that will help you both personally and professionally, whether it's in your career, your business, with your family, your emotions, whatever it may be. And today we're going to be talking all about emotions. We're going to be talking about emotions. We're going to be talking about experiences in our childhood, experiences that might have come out of traumatic events in our life that might be affecting us in today's world. It might be what we think about. It might be thoughts that keep us up at night, right? And I think it's fair to say that we all experience trauma in some degree. And we haven't really talked about trauma or how it affects us in our body, how it affects our mind, how it affects our subconscious on this show before. And when our guest today reached out to me, her name is Marina Yanay-Triner. She reached out to me, and she is an expert when it comes to trauma and healing from trauma. And she's got processes that are going to help you do that. So without further ado, for those who don't know Marina Yanay-Triner is a transformational coach who works with people who are disengaged with life, burnt out, or checked out. And she supports them in experiencing more joy and aliveness in their lives. As a trauma-informed coach, Marina works with clients to go deep into the roots of behavioral patterns that hold them back from experiencing their life to the fullest. They look at childhood-rooted beliefs, emotions, behavioral patterns, and the unconscious to create massive transformation. She uses body-based somatic approaches to support a connection back to the body, strengthen their connections with their instincts and intuition, and flourish. A lot of awesome stuff here. We're going to be diving into all of it. Marina, it is a pleasure to have you here.
I'm so excited. I love how you read my bio. It was like so alive.
I had to make it flourish because I saw that last word and I was like, oh, I got to make this stand out. This is incredible. So, Marina, what exactly is trauma and how can we define it for the sake of this conversation?
I actually am going to have a post pretty soon with several definitions. My favorite one is basically it's a disconnect from the body. That's it. Disconnect from the body, disconnect from the environment. There's also a simple one. It's too much, too fast, too soon. So when you hear that, you realize, okay, people think that trauma is really extreme events, right? And of course they can be as well, but it's also anything that overwhelms us. When we're little, a lot of things can overwhelm us and we don't know how to react or respond. So it feels like too much. And that is when we disconnect. And that happens primarily in our bodies where we just drift off, we maybe float up, we freeze. So those are different body responses. And as you said, I work in the body. So it's really a body response more than anything. The mind is also, of course, important, but that's why I like working in the mind because it's a very physical response and it stays in our bodies. It's stored there.
I'm someone who likes to I'm a control freak to the point where when I'm driving somewhere, like that's just the thing. I like to be the person to drive. I like to be the person who leads the conversation. I was actually having a conversation with my coach yesterday and we were just talking about, some of these things that I brought up to him. And I was like, why is it that when I'm having conversation, it goes in this way? And he's like, well, because you like to have control. And I think it's from my background in sales. So when you say to me that a lot of our trauma comes from childhood and it comes from overwhelm when we're a child, it kind of freaks me out because back then, obviously, I didn't have the mental resources or capabilities to have control of those situations. So if trauma is found from overwhelm when you're a child, like, do we all experience trauma as a child that we just aren't even aware of?
Yes, absolutely. And that's why, like, sometimes I don't use the word trauma because people think, oh, no. Like, I don't have trauma, right? And I know it's a big word. I've learned to just not be intimidated by it at all because I truly believe that it's the missing piece in personal development. For me, it was for years. I did a ton of personal development and it was all in the mind, like lots of mindset work. And no one talks about trauma. And yeah, we all have that because as children, we're so vulnerable. we're so dependent on our caregivers. And even as babies, when you think about it, what's the only option? It's like crying, right? We can't walk away, so we can't run and we can't fight. So basically the only option is to cry, and then if our needs are not being met, then we can freeze, we can feel that overwhelm. So yeah, every single one of us experiences some form of it.
Interesting. So let's say on this childhood area of time here, I know you've mentioned that there are deep-rooted beliefs that are ingrained during childhood. Are they generally similar from person to person? Like, what are some of the beliefs that were instilled in us when we were children that caused that overwhelm or trauma that might even affect us today?
Yeah, so I think, the beliefs form within an event that, for example, our parents don't meet our needs, our physical needs. Could be we're hungry and they don't, feed us for whatever reason. Maybe they're stressed out. They don't meet our emotional needs. So maybe they are emotionally numb or unavailable themselves. And then
Mm.
it's really hard for them to be like, it's okay to cry. It's normal. Don't feel bad about it. Or it's okay to be angry. They want to just quiet that down. Like they don't want to hear us. They don't want to witness that. And so the beliefs can be, I'm too much. I'm not good enough. They can't, and they form through the event. It's not that someone specifically told you you're too much, but it starts to form like, can you just be quiet? You're so loud right now and I have a headache, right? And it's not if your parents were horrible people, not necessarily. It's just human. Like humans, our parents are human, so they're not perfect. And so every single one of our parents left us with something to work through. Could be really, really huge. Maybe could be easier or quicker to work through, but they all have. It could be also issues with boundaries. That's a very big one. Having trouble setting boundaries. Could be control. Like I love that you shared that one. That's a struggle of mine too. So it's like it's also the environment we grew up, if
Mm.
you grew up in a tense or stressful environment, if you felt like your parents were anxious or stressed, then you want to feel in control, right? Because you didn't feel in control growing up. So it could be those things. It could be perfectionism is another big one. So all these little patterns that show up and they kind of almost like ruin, or they can ruin our goals or our path to what we want to achieve in our life.
Yeah, and that's the scary part, at least for me, because I don't really have a lot of memories from when I was younger. Like some of my earliest memories were when I was literally in like kindergarten. So I was like 5 years old. I don't remember much from before that area of time, but I know that a lot of things must have happened. Right. So, how can I recognize what those beliefs were that were rooted in childhood, or how can I recognize that trauma that may be affecting my life right now? I'm just not even noticing that that's what it is.
Yeah, it's a great question. And first, you said the word scary, right? And again, like when I talk about this, often people tell me I've never seen anyone so happy talking about trauma. And I'm like, yeah. So I just want to tell everyone who's listening and watching this that trauma doesn't have to feel so scary, and there's a lot of wisdom in it. Actually, Dr. Gabor Mate, who's one of my absolute heroes, just came out with a movie called The Wisdom of Trauma, and I think there's so much wisdom there. And I love those aha moments when you just realize, like, I've been living with this pattern, which I thought was my personality, right? A lot of people think I'm just a control freak, or I just have a lot of anger, or I'm just a perfectionist. But no, that's actually something that you can shift. So I find that very exciting. And yes, most of us don't even remember where the source of it is. And we don't remember, the specific story. Like, I'll give you an example. I just found out, I always knew that when I was really little, I had a lot of stomach aches and I was even in the hospital. But my mom just told me that, oh, yeah, yeah, but I left for 2 weeks when you were a baby to like finish my exams for college. And during that time is when you had your stomach aches and you landed in the hospital. And when I came back, surprise, surprise, everything was gone. Like you had no more stomach aches. And I was like, oh, this makes so much sense now that I understand, attachment. Like when we're babies, how much we need to be with our moms, specifically, also with our dads, but like specifically with our moms, and how much we learn from that connection with our mom when we're babies about relationships and about how we're supposed to be in the world. Because if our moms travel and leave us, even for a little bit, we learn, oh my God, like people can abandon me and there might be something wrong with me. And, these kinds of thoughts. So maybe we don't remember it, but our body remembers.
Wow.
And that's why I always work with the body, because those memories, this is like science, but also like it's just so mind-boggling how much our cells have memory, and they carry memories even 4 generations back.
Wow.
Even your mom, your grandma, and your great-grandma, and also all the men, of course, and even the people that they encountered, that carries over. And I have chills as I say this because I just find this so incredible that when your mother is born, she's born with all the eggs to make you, because women don't produce new eggs throughout their life, right? So she already has all that DNA inside of her that makes you. And so all her life experiences and all the experiences before, and it might be even more, but that's what science has found so far. It's 4 generations that all carries over to you. So all that being said, our bodies remember that. And that's why I love somatic methods, where we actually don't even say the story, but we discover things in the middle of a trigger. Whenever like something triggers you, or you feel like your response is very extreme, and the next day you're like, I don't understand why it was such a big deal. Like it's not that big of a deal, right? But in the moment you're like, like maybe you feel very shut down, or you're raging, or you're so sad and you just don't understand, and you're derailed from daily life. That is when okay, there's something, I am not actually responding to the present moment. I'm actually reacting to the past in the present moment. So that's what's happening. And it's so important to know that, because, so I remember in the past when I didn't know all these things, I didn't have the awareness of my nervous system and all this stuff. I would just beat myself up and be like, what is wrong with you, Marina? Just get your things together, And I'll give you like the simplest example. One of my triggers is abandonment and rejection in any little way. So when someone leaves, like our intern left for my other company this week, and that was like so hard for me. And of course there was a voice, and she was so happy, and she was moving on to bigger, better things, but we had a great relationship and it was a great experience. But just, I felt it in my body. And triggers are something that you feel in your body. You feel the constriction, right? You feel maybe like heaviness in your chest. You feel shut down. All of that are body sensations. And I felt it hardcore. And of course, there was a voice in my head that was like, this is not a big deal. Other people would just like be over this. But for me, it was, because I have an abandonment trigger that I'm working through, and I'm sure it's going to change one day because I'm working on it. But I just let myself, with compassion, have a slower day and just be kind to myself and my body, because it was so like in pain in the moment.
That is absolutely fascinating. And thank you for sharing that. And I definitely want to unpack that, because I want to ask you like what process that you lead people through. Now, just to make sure I hear you right when you say this, because I've never heard of anything like this, and it's mind-blowing. When we have a reaction that is not ourself, either we lash out at someone, we're angry, you have those body sensations of abandonment, like you said, or we just have a response that's not expected from ourselves, and we notice it afterwards, like the next day, like you said. those might be reactions from several past generations of our lineage.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So let me share. Okay. There's a book. I'm so in love with it. It's so fascinating. It's called It Didn't Start With You. It's by Mark Wolin. And I can share all the details if you would like a link or whatever. And one of his questions, one of the primary questions is, what's your biggest fear? Like biggest fear. And then he walks you through a really special process of tracing it into your family. And it was so interesting because mine is that I will be alone. Everybody will leave me. No one will love me. And it's so fascinating because I've never had that experience. Like, I come from a super loving family, like it never. So I was always like, I was doing a lot of inner child work, and I was always looking at my life, and I was so confused because now, being so connected to my body, I'm very connected to my body, and that grows and grows. I can really tap into things. And I always felt like, this is not mine. Like, I feel this. This is not my story. Like, where is this coming from? And it's so funny because I can't believe I didn't put two and two together, that it's my grandma's biggest fear. Because when my grandma was 2, she was in a labor camp as part of the Holocaust. And a day after liberation, her mom died.
Wow.
And she always would tell us, like, I never had a mom. There was no one to really love me. If you don't have a mom, you're alone and no one really loves you. And that was like her mantra. And only when I intentionally, like, I was like, okay, I'm going to find out everything about my grandparents. And even before, whatever they remember. So I went for a walk with my grandma, and I literally questioned her about like everything. Like, tell me about your mom, tell me about your dad. And it was so interesting, and they love talking about it. So it's a very also like bonding experience with your ancestors, your family. And then again, she said this sentence, and I was like, I cannot believe I didn't realize, this is my grandma's like theme song of her life. And she was, she raised me as well. So she was very active in my life. And my grandma is actually pretty emotionally like disconnected. But in that moment, I told her, like, Grandma, I hope you know that you do belong in our family and that we love you and you're not alone. And she like had a response. Like, I could tell she was like, thank you so much. And I'm getting like a little bit choked up just like saying this, because she said, thank you so much for, saying that to me. And I really felt like it hit her,
Wow.
So it's just so crazy, because now I understand when this shows up, even the awareness, the first step in any transformation is our awareness, as I'm sure you also resonate with, right? And even that awareness just lifted like a ton of bricks off my shoulders, that this is not my story, it's her story. And so when it shows up, I treat myself with a lot of kindness, and I know, okay, this is a process. So one day, maybe it won't be so intense in my body, but this is a process. And so I'm very kind to myself and compassionate. And that's also a huge piece of what I do with clients, is teaching people to rewire that mean girl and boy in our head, right? Actually, it's not a boy. It's more like a teenager or adult, because as little kids, we were so nice to ourselves, but we learned to be like so self-critical. So there's an amazing workbook that's called the Mindful Self-Compassion Workbook. And it's amazing. It's actually science-based as well. It's written by 2 PhDs from UCSD, which is right next to me here, which is where I went to school as well.
Cool.
And they walk you through a process that is so powerful. It completely changed how I talk to myself. I used to be insanely self-critical. And that's a big piece of it, just really relearning. And it's actually much easier than you think, but relearning self-compassion, because it's already within us. So that's why I call it relearning, because it's already there. And everything I do is about uncovering something. It's not discovering. It's not that I'm like, here, clients, let me bring a new truth. Like even when I teach them about trauma, and I love teaching them as well, just like a little bit of, awareness and education about trauma and our nervous system and all these things, they already know it. Everybody already knows it. It's very intuitive. And so we're like, oh, that makes so much sense. So when we have that compassion, it's so much easier to be an observer, also stay in our bodies, but also observe without judgment. Oh my God, my chest is so tight right now. I like can't breathe, and my heart rate is really slow or really fast, just all these things, and just be present with it. And then there's another process that you can actually work through trauma somatically, which I can share if you would like. But in the moment of a really big trigger, it's really about being present with our body without judgment and compassion, and just have that awareness and allow ourselves to rest, or really ask our body, like, what do I need right now? Do I need to sleep? Do I need to go for a walk? And when you're judging, you cannot see what's in front of you, right? Because you're just busy judging it. So when you become compassionate about what's in front of you, you can just see it and be with it.
So fascinating. And I like that you talk about awareness in that way, because not a lot of people talk about awareness. And I talk about it constantly because I talk about emotions and how I was able to practice more empowering emotions most of the time. And the first step is becoming aware of the emotions that you're experiencing in general. And a practice that I've recommended to people is set an alarm on your phone to vibrate or go off with a pleasant sound that literally asks you, how am I feeling right now? So that you can step back and be the awareness, be the part of you that is aware of how you're feeling, because then you can look at it, like you said, objectively. Oh, interesting how I'm having this specific feeling in my body right now. What could this mean? Right? Not just to necessarily change it immediately, because maybe that feeling is telling us something. But now that you've mentioned that our feelings in our body can stem and be traced back generations, that is like a breakthrough moment for me to hear that. If only there was like an ancestry like .com like kit that could help you trace back your body sensations. I mean, that might be a business in itself, right? But I want to stay on awareness because I'm curious to hear what you would say to this. How do you recommend that people be more present, and how do you recommend that we even be more aware? Is there like a process?
So our nervous system is really interesting. Just to explain a little bit about that, overwhelm and all of that process. And it comes with awareness, because when we are overwhelmed, we typically disconnect from our bodies, so we can really emphasize the mind. And that's why, like, so many I work with very sensitive people usually, and so many sensitive people are so disconnected from their bodies, and they're also so aware because they're constantly using their mind to study themselves, to analyze, to be like, why do I feel this way? Instead of, like you so beautifully said, actually just feeling, it's, we overanalyze instead of being in the moment feeling. Because here's the thing. So when we experience any kind of trauma, any kind, again, bringing it back to too much, too fast, too soon in a moment, our nervous system so when you think of yourself like fighting off a lion, right? Or seeing a lion, because this is really primal stuff. It's our instincts. It's our nature. We're more like animals in that. We can fight or we can flee, right? Those are the responses. And when you think of all that survival energy that is being built up when you see a lion, you realize, okay, well, I can discharge all of that energy in my body when I'm running away or when I'm fighting, right? So they found that people who have post-traumatic stress, and I don't call it a disorder because I don't think it's a disorder, it's just a normal reaction to freezing. Because when you freeze, it's also a survival mechanism, because the freeze is like, I don't want to feel the pain of someone eating me, right? Quite
Yeah.
simply. Or the lion will take the prey to another spot, and when you play dead, maybe you can run away. So all of these are very much survival instincts, so we don't need to judge them. And, very often we do judge that. Like, why did I freeze? I should have done this. I should have said this, right? But it's just our body in that moment makes a very quick decision. Freezing is the best option. I don't have the tools to fight or flee right now. And when you freeze, all of that insane amount of energy, the survival energy, which is like the greatest energy that we probably ever generate in our bodies, it just gets trapped in that freeze. And that's why it's so difficult to be connected to our body, because we feel that numbness and that apathy. Like you mentioned, I work with a lot of people who feel very apathetic and disengaged with life because they numbed themselves several times and they learned, okay, this is how I'm surviving. I'm just numbed out. And in order to access the body, they have to work through that survival energy that is trapped. And under that survival energy is anger, sadness, like all these emotions. And it just feels like so much. And that's why, we go very, very slow. And it's not about like, okay, feel everything right now, like, let's go. It's more about teaching the body not to fear all these things, because the body is going to be like, freeze. Oh my God, I don't know what to do. Like, this is scary. I'm being chased, but it's teaching the body like, freeze is okay. Like, I can be with this. Okay. I feel the numbness right here. And then there's a process called pendulation where we go back and forth between a frozen spot and a non-frozen spot. And it can be in your body. Like for me, it's often my hand or my foot feels really free and open. And then maybe my chest or my stomach can feel that numbness. And as you go back and forth, your body naturally releases the freeze. That's just what our body does anyway. But for people who have severe or even not severe trauma, our body just doesn't know how to do that anymore. So we kind of like guide it back to that. Almost like, from the outside when someone is guiding you. And we also do it very slow so that we access all of that energy underneath in bits, and we kind of like take it apart, bit by bit, until we're able to be a container for all this energy and all this emotion and just be okay with it. And this is the process of releasing trauma and also accessing our body.
Yeah, I really want to go into that process. And before we do, who are the people that come to you for help mostly? Like, who are the people that come to you for help, and what do they want your help with?
So it's people who are very sensitive, empathetic, like deep feelers, and they feel shut down. They feel unexcited about life. They feel disengaged with life. And it's basically, me a while ago. And so it's always like that. We always coach people who, we've been through that. So we understand their experience. And maybe they have a lot of goals and things that they really want to achieve. Like they have a bigger vision for what they're living currently, but they just feel stuck. Like they feel stuck and they tried a million things. They're very aware, they're very like, I know like where this is coming from. Maybe they've tried like talk therapy, all these different things, but it's just not, there's no progress. Like it feels stuck. And so I help them with the body. So few coaches and therapists, some do, of course. There's a whole somatic movement. It's very exciting. But very few address these things and very few address trauma. And it's mostly like mindset, or behavioral changes. Like, let's set up a routine, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't work for a lot of people. Like, they want to do the routine, right? They're all for it. And maybe they'll do it the first day, the second day, and then they're like, resistance. So we really dig into that. We really honor the resistance, where we become friends with the resistance. We meet the resistance with love. And just like you said, there's so much to learn from emotions, right? There's so much to learn from resistance. Like, it's that little kid who's like, I don't want to. Like, why don't you want to? What happened when you were little? Maybe you were forced all the time to do things that you don't want to. Maybe you were criticized nonstop by your family. There's many different things. So we kind of like take that apart, and we work with the body. My clients close their eyes a lot of the session and really connect, because aliveness means that you feel your body all the time. You listen to your needs, whether it's like, I want food right now, or, when you think of our ancestors, like way, way, way back, that's how they lived. They were more like animals. They were listening to their instincts. They were doing what they want. Now it's like, I should, right? I should work here. I should do this. I should marry this person. And from that should comes the numbness, because we're shutting down what we want. We shut down our needs and our emotions constantly. And so our body's like, okay, well, I'm not going to tell you anymore because you obviously don't listen. So I'm just going to be quiet. And so, yeah, it's basically a relearning of listening to the body. And from that, you just feel like so much more joy and presence, and everything is exciting. Like I always share, like even for me, just going for a walk in nature and like seeing nature, I just feel alive from anything, even from being sad, because that's part of life.
Yeah, absolutely. So this body-based somatic approach, I don't even have like a visual of what that looks like. So someone comes to you, they want help with some overwhelm or some trauma in their life. What does the process itself look like? So they tell you, and also, does this also work with people who have that post-traumatic stress?
Yes. I would say that if someone is severely, has severe PTSD, I probably wouldn't work with them. It depends. Just because, I would kind of send them to therapy, I think, for that. Yeah, but I would gauge it. I would just talk to the person and just see. But definitely it works. I mean, I lived with PTSD for like 15 years, and somatic experiencing was the greatest shift that I've ever experienced, in terms of all my symptoms and everything. And again, our symptoms are just teachers of everything that we've pushed down and kind of hid. So what it looks like. So I wouldn't do a full on, hour session of somatic experiencing or somatic work right away with someone. It would be like talking to them, and maybe ask them, so how are you doing today? First, we set goals for what they want. Recently, I worked with someone that had so much fear come up when we were even setting goals. And that was such a teaching moment for this person. Like, wow, I'm even like scared to have goals for my life. So when they tell me, yeah, my day was okay, I don't know, this and this happened, I might stop them and say, okay, how do you know that? How do you know that this and this, that you feel this and this?
Wow.
And they're like, I don't know, right? I don't, what are you talking about? Yeah. So I would have them close their eyes and just slowly notice their body. Like, tell me, what do you feel in your chest? What do you feel in your stomach? What do you feel in your throat? Oh, I feel kind of like my chest is closed up. That's how I know that I kind of had a bad day. Okay. So we start there, and I kind of also see like, what words are they using? Like, how much can they describe their body? They might be like, I don't really know. It kind of feels, I don't know, they might not even have the vocabulary. So we kind of build that up slowly, and that's the connection piece with our bodies. And I also watch for when the freeze comes, because a lot of times when they'll say, this is what I feel in my chest. Oh, I kind of don't feel it anymore. Okay, it's freeze. And that makes sense. So then I would say, okay, do you feel any sensation in your body right now? Anywhere? Yeah, I think I feel it in my knee. I don't know. Okay, so let's stay there. Let's stay with our knee. What do you feel in your knee? I feel tingles. Okay, cool. So tingles, let's stay with the tingles. So we just kind of like travel all around the body. And we get used to that, even just being in the body. And we slowly work through, like, for example, this week I was so excited for one of my clients that was able to feel a lot of anger, which for people who are depressed, for example, or who feel that shutdown a lot, anger is so good because it's so mobilizing. It wakes us up. It moves us into action. And those people really struggle staying with anger. Just like I feel it right now and I'm staying with it, they go into shutdown. So this client was able to feel anger. And then what I asked was for them to push the wall, but not like super fast, but really slow, and stay with the sensation. To really, it's the opposite of the trauma, right? Because the trauma is just like, boom, it's fast. And my clients get frustrated, which I get, that it's slow. We slow everything down. So I ask them to push the wall slowly and put their weight into the wall and really feel that energy discharging. And it just feels so good. Like after that energy discharges, that's where you tap into your aliveness and you feel that your body just free. Like you feel that sense of liberation of all that stored up energy that just released. So it's a very, very, very slow process in terms of how I introduce the somatic work and just them feeling comfortable with their bodies. And some people it's faster, it just depends on the person.
It sounds a lot like a form of energy healing,
Mm-hmm.
which is a beautiful thing, because we're never taught about energy. We're never taught that we are energy beings. We're kind of left to our own devices. And then once we have all these different buildups of energy that are now not serving us in the way we want them to, now we go search for a solution to that, right? And the sad thing is, like, for a lot of people, they don't discover people like you, and they think that the only cure is going to a professional who isn't trained in this, right? They went to medical school to learn how to diagnose people or cut people open, not to diagnose energy and buildups and traumatic stress. So they say, well, here's Zoloft or here's
Right.
Xanax. And then you go under this medication and you begin to accept that as your new normal, when there could be a solution for you to take that energy and actually use it constructively, right? We're just never taught those things. So when you're helping people through this process, what is the outcome generally to release it? Is it to use it? Is it to eliminate that energy? Like what is like the end all be all when you're working with a client?
So I also love, by the way, that you mentioned that it's like energy work. It's funny. I think now that I've done so much of this, I'm much more open to spirituality. And it used to be very difficult for me to connect to spirituality because, again, it's connection, right? It's connection. And I was very disconnected. And actually, the founder of Somatic Experiencing is Peter Levine. And the cool thing about him is he is a PhD, like he's a scientist and everything, but he also works with shamans. So this all, it's just from all angles. So it's so cool. The goal is for them to be okay, to learn to be okay with this energy in their body, to not fear it. And so that in their life, when again it comes up, and it will, right? Because we're human. For example, they might be in a car accident, that might happen, or any other kind of trauma. When we have a lot of unprocessed trauma, any little thing throws us over the edge. So it's to have a body that knows how to handle this type of energy, not fear it, and not be thrown into freeze. That is so, so important. Not be thrown into freeze when we experience that energy. We might be thrown into freeze in another traumatic event, but then after the traumatic event, how do we, process all of those emotions and that sensations and the energy in a way that doesn't throw us into freeze, in a way that's like, I feel angry and I can stay here and feel the anger. I don't have to shut down. Or I feel really sad and I'm not scared that this sadness is going to turn into a depression that I will never come out of. I know that this is It's just energy and it's okay. And this is not something that I can teach someone by telling them it's fine. It's fine. You just think it's scary, but it's not, right? No, that doesn't work that way. It's our body. Our body is kind of like an animal and it's like, oh my God, I don't think I can handle this. So it's teaching. It's literally your body. I mean, I'm not teaching anything. It's their body teaching itself that, okay, I actually, yeah, today I felt sadness for like 30 more seconds. Like one of my clients for work sets timers for different things. So I was literally like, okay, use the same timer that you, it was funny because I said like, I want you to set a timer for 30 seconds and feel anger. And the client was like, oh, I set timers for work anyway. So I'm just going to use that timer and just 30 seconds a day, stay with my anger, try to stay with my anger. So it's expanding capacity, expanding our capacity. It's not about getting rid of anything. It's expanding our capacity to be with it.
It's almost like giving yourself different options when that emotion does arise, right? When those feelings do occur, it's like, okay, now it's here, right? Now I'm going to be with this emotion. I'm not going to allow myself to freeze. And I guess when you say freeze, I'm still a little confused by that because I can't, I guess I don't really know what that means. When you say freeze, what does that look like in the real world? Like outside of the lion situation,
Yeah.
what does it look like when someone's frozen?
It can feel like numbness or shutdown in our bodies. Like it could literally be like a part of our body feels numb. It could be like disorientation, like really just confused. It could be an indecisiveness. Like a lot of my clients, I'll ask them, what do you want the most? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. So it shows up in that I don't know speak.
Yeah.
So I notice it. I'm like, yes, you do, but okay. So it's underneath the freeze, all the knowing, right? It could be disassociation. So that means that you're somewhere, but you're not present. Maybe your eye, like you can't quite focus on things in front of you. Your eyes are kind of like moving fast, or you literally feel, and this is, an maybe more extreme, but you feel like you're kind of floating out of your body, or like really inability to focus. Like Gabor Mate talks a lot about ADD and ADHD, things that I never learned because I never experienced that. But it's so fascinating that he says that ADD is like, I don't want to be here. Like, I want to disengage. This is too much for me. Same with addiction, right? We're numbing something. There's something underneath that. So ADD is this like disengagement with life. Like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to feel this. I don't want to experience this. Well, why? There's a reason. It doesn't just come along. It's not just genetics. Something is happening to activate the genetics. So what happened? So it's really, really fascinating. And yeah, it's just generally this inability to be present and to be here, right here, alive. Like right now I'm talking to you, I feel right here, but there were many moments in my life and still are, where I feel like I'm not really here, or yawning. It's so funny because by my therapist, I work with a somatic experiencing therapist, and my clients do the same thing. She always catches me yawning, and she's like, "Okay, you're out." I'm like, yeah, I'm falling asleep. Sometimes you're tired, that's true, but sometimes, like, when I start talking even about the nervous system, sometimes with certain people, just explaining, so this is how our nervous system, and I'm like, all right, okay, close your eyes, feel your feet on the ground. Like, we don't have to continue right now, because we want to be present, and we want to work with that kind of bouncing back and forth between. That's a shutdown. Your body's going to sleep. So let's come back to being present, and then we can keep talking.
Now, someone's out in the real world. They have something very important coming up. They're stressed, they're feeling anxiety, and they're frozen in a sense. Like it's about to come up, their survival instincts come into play, and they're like, "Oh my God, it's happening," right? And they go numb. is there a strategy that someone can use in order to unfreeze themselves in a moment where it's really important for them to do that?
Yeah. And you brought up anxiety, by the way. I forgot that one. That is actually a form of freeze. That's a form of kind of dissociating and
Huh.
being in the mind. So that's another good one to mention. Yes. So there's a term called resourcing, which, for example, like as I said, I'm still exploring spirituality, but I do have crystals from Sedona on my desk. And one day my therapist was like, "Is there anything on your desk that you just want to grab right now?" And, intuitively. And I was like, "Yeah, this thing, it's really fun to just like hold it and it's cool." And, so it can be an object like that is a resource. And and like literally I'm holding this right now and I feel my stomach feels so good. So it's something you hold in your hand maybe that just brings you that calm, and you might go back into anxiety, overwhelm, and then again you hold it, and it might not be perfect. I'm not saying you're going to become Buddha by holding something in your hand, but it helps you ground. So when you hold it, the important thing is to actually focus on your body and bring it back to the body, and notice like the shift that comes about. It could also be visualizing a place. Like for me, I love backpacking. So I visualize this one lake that we always go to, and it's freezing, but it's just so beautiful. And so I just visualize and I bring it like fully into my experience. And I really recommend closing your eyes, because then you can tap into your body. Again, it's super important. So just see yourself. And I actually worked on something in my business with that, going in between the lake and the thing that I need to do that is freaking me out. And I just went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it does really help to have someone guiding you, because they can see, like, I notice everything, like people swallowing, for example. It's like their emotions are swallowing. They don't want them to come out. Wow. So someone noticing you is really helpful. But if you're by yourself, any resource, it can be thinking of a person you love, an animal you love, but really feeling your body, what starts to happen, and you'll feel a defrost. It literally starts to feel like a defrost, and almost like, you can visualize snow and like the first flowers coming, literally, breaking the snow. Or one visualization that intuitively came to me with a client, and now I use it all the time, is imagine sand in a very calm lake, just sand that settles down to the bottom, and you just imagine it coming down. So that's called regulation of our nervous system. When our nervous system is dysregulated, which is that freeze, it could be fight or flight, we imagine that sand settling, right? And we literally feel that in our body, like that settling sensation.
Yeah, I felt it as you described it, which it felt like I was like going into like a hypnotic trance when you said that.
Yes.
A lot of it is very similar. I've done a lot of studying with hypnosis and with NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and a lot of what you've been talking about this whole time is very similar to someone goes into a hypnotic trance to become more aware, to access unconscious resources in themselves. You talking about grabbing something on the desk activates the physiology, and then you change the focus to that lake that you like. So you're employing strategies that are helping you to change the way you feel fast. And like I mentioned earlier, and like you were saying, it's like giving yourself options for when you do go into that frozen state. It's like a pattern interrupt. You do something to quickly get yourself out of that state so that you're ready for whatever it is that you have to perform with or perform for. So absolutely
Yeah.
fascinating. When you're working with someone, what does it look like when someone works with you, in the sense of, obviously everything is virtual right now, right? So your one-on-one coaching that you do with people, can you paint a picture of what that would look like for someone?
Yeah. I was just going to say about NLP, even though I'm not at all an NLP expert or anything, all the mindset stuff that I would do, and I don't know, maybe NLP is also in the body, but I remember doing some of those, strategies, but I was always in the head, like in the
Mm.
mind. So the biggest difference for me is that we're with our bodies. And
Mhm.
that's where, all my constriction and fears and everything, it wasn't up here. It was in my body. Like, I could talk about my fear all day long, but nothing would shift, even
Yeah.
if I understood it. And even if I shifted to a nice image, but bringing it to the body has really helped me. So what it looks like is I work with clients 3 to 6 months, and I do a 1 month break in between the 3 months. I just found that it works so well for all my clients, and they have access to me throughout on text. So they share what's going on for them. I love sharing additional resources because I'm always learning, always. Unfortunately, like, this conversation is going to be outdated in a month for me, because I'm just constantly, you probably are similar, right? Just,
Okay, so it's for 3 to 6 months, you take a break in between, they
yeah.
have
And
access with
then,
you. Do you speak weekly? Is that how it works?
yes. So I speak with them weekly, and then I have a week off per month. So it's 3 sessions.
Oh, cool.
And I use, of course, like, the processes that I mentioned in the body, and then also talking about it, of course, inner child work. I love inner child work. Different forms of breath work that work for different people. Some people it doesn't work for.
Mm.
Um, Meditation, but the form that really gets you connected with your body. So a lot of different tools. I'm pretty intuitive, so I don't have like a very set structure. My only super structured session is session 1, which is like goal setting, going over an agreement between us, and really discovering, like, how do they like working with people, what works for them, what doesn't work for them, so that I know how to best serve them. But the rest of the sessions, we just focus on one goal. So I have them set goals for like every area of their life. And then they say this one, is the greatest priority. Also set values. So we talk about values, and they choose the values that are most important to them. And we check in that the goals really align with their values. And yeah, and then we check in with their goal pretty much every session, but it's very intuitive. It's all in service of that goal, but it's very intuitive, whatever comes up, whatever came up for them that week or the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's an awesome structure, or like you said, it's an awesome lack of structure, except for the
Yeah.
first session, because then it can go naturally in whatever direction it's meant to. A lot of programs out there, they like to keep everything to this is week 1, week 2, week 3, but how can you do that when everybody is so different?
Yeah.
Right? It's practically impossible. And
Yeah.
I like how you incorporate the personal development and the goals into that, because I remember you saying trauma is the missing piece of personal development that nobody's talking about. I did some research on trauma before we talked, and there's not even a ton of like videos and resources out there for this sort of thing. I know it's nothing I've dived into before. Now, in terms of how can someone get a hold of you in order to learn more about your coaching and your services?
Yeah, so Instagram is a great place. I also share a ton of education on Instagram about trauma and different things. And there's a link on Instagram to book a 30-minute session with me. So if you go on my Instagram and you're like, oh, this really resonates, this content really resonates, or you watch the stories, or you watch this and it's resonating with you, then you can book a 30-minute call. I do it on the phone, not on Zoom.
Mm.
And then if it's a good fit, then we move on to whatever package we decide on.
Okay, very cool. I'm going to put links, guys, to Marina's Instagram. It's at marina.y.t. And I'm also going to add a link to Marina's website, which is marinayt.com. So you can go check out her content. You can get in touch. You can follow her, because I commend you. And I have one last very quick question for you, but I just want to commend you for. I consider myself an empath as well, in the sense that I've heard you mention how you like to take time for you, right? So that you can recharge, you can do all those things. And you quite literally feel people's energy, right?
Yeah.
And I feel other people's energies as well. And for those who don't know, Marina's over in San Diego. So it was 6 a.m. when we first hopped on this call. I would have not been, I would have thought it was the afternoon. I mean, your energy was up here. I wake up at like to do 7 o'clock podcast sometimes, and I'm like, oh my God, this is way too early for this. So your energy is radiant. You have a positive energy about you that just flows virtually through the screen. So this was an absolute pleasure because I fed off of your positive energy, and I hope that it was reciprocated to you
Oh
as
yeah, I
well.
was just gonna say, and I fed off of your like I get people within like 5 seconds. Yeah, and I just love this conversation and I loved your energy. And it's so cool how we can feel it through computers. It's easy to always feel it no matter what.
Absolutely, 100%. So my final question is, what is the positive impact that you want to leave on this world and the people in this world?
Hmm. You said the word empath. So I want people to start connecting. I believe everyone's an empath, but some of us are disconnected from that because it feels like too much. So I want to give people the tools to be able to connect to that and to live with empathy. And how I define empathy is seeing people's needs versus the strategies to fulfill those needs. So to really focus on empathizing with people's needs, which we all can because needs are universal. They're things like wanting to feel more loved. That's me. So it's easy to say, wanting to rest, like whatever it may be, to really see that more than they see the way that they, try to get those needs. And sometimes those ways can be murder and rape and all kinds of different things that we don't agree with, but we can always see the needs.
That's a beautiful answer. And I know you're already making an impact, and I can't imagine the impact that you'll make a year from now, 5 years from now. Imagine 10 years from now, all the lives that you'll reach. So I'm just excited to have met you at this point in your journey, and I look forward to see where you'll go.
Thank you so much, Brandon.
Thanks so much, Marina. Have an awesome day. What an awesome discussion with Marina Yanay-Triner. Again, I'm going to post all the links to Marina's information, her Instagram, her website, so that you can follow her content, so that you can get in touch with her. We talked about a lot of awesome things, from past generation body sensations to self-care, self-love, to awareness, to being present, to grounding, to resourcing. We talked about a lot. So go back, rewatch this episode, and literally stop at each point, take notes of what each point means for you. Because my biggest takeaway from this conversation, because there was a lot, my biggest one was how we carry along those body sensations generation to generation, which I've never heard of anything like that before, but it makes a lot of sense, especially with the personal story that Marina herself shared. So again, all of Marina's links are in the description. For those who always ask, how can we support the broadcast? Number one, thanks for asking. Number two, the way that you can support it is share this show with one friend who wants to learn more about how they can use this stress or anxiety or these emotions in their favor, how they can use these emotions to serve them, how they can become more aware. Just share this with one person who could use the message. We don't run ads, no advertisements, no price of admission. Just share the show with one friend, and it will be greatly appreciated. As always, thank you so much for watching and giving us your time. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.